The dimly lit tavern reeked of salt water and spilled ale, its wooden beams groaning with the weight of a storm raging outside. Dr. Eliza Hart sat hunched over a table near the hearth, her fingers absently tracing the rim of an empty glass. The flickering firelight caught the edges of her tattered notebook, its pages filled with sketches, half-finished translations, and desperate scribbles. Eliza's eyes darted to the package she'd been given that morning, a roll of aged parchment bound with a fraying ribbon. The bartender, a grizzled man with one good eye, leaned closer. "You're sure about this, Doc? People V died chasing that legend." Eliza didn't answer immediately. Her mind was still racing from the moment she'd unwrapped the parchment. The symbols etched into the map were unmistakably Priazari, an ancient civilization thought to have vanished over 1,000 years ago. Most dismissed the Priazari as myth, their supposed treasures nothing but fairy tales told to entertain drunken sailors. But Eliza knew better. She'd seen enough fragments to believe in their existence. And now, the map before her pointed to the location of Eternia's Eye, the fabled artifact said to grant its bearer the power to control fate itself. "I didn't come all this way to back out now," she said, her voice steady despite the doubt gnawing at her. Before the bartender could respond, the door burst open, letting in a gust of wind and a tall figure cloaked in shadow. The newcomer scanned the room before locking eyes with Eliza. He crossed the tavern in a few long strides, pulling back his hood to reveal the weathered face of Marcus Kane. "Doc," Marcus said gruffly, dropping into the chair opposite her. "I heard you've got something that needs protecting, and a lot of people willing to kill for it." Eliza's gaze narrowed. "I didn't tell anyone I was here," Marcus smirked, leaning back. "You didn't have to. Word travels fast when you're playing with legends." Before she could respond, a soft cough interrupted them. At the next table, a young woman with dark curls was eavesdropping openly, her fingers flipping a coin across her knuckles. "Don't mind me," the woman said with a sly grin. "I'm just here for the drinks, and maybe the treasure. Soraya Vega, by the way." Eliza groaned, pinching the bridge of her nose. "I don't have time for this." Soraya's grin widened. "Sure you do. You'll need someone like me when you realize that map of yours is written in puzzles only a genius can solve. Lucky for you, I'm that genius." Before Eliza could protest, another voice cut in. "She's not wrong," came a new voice, accented and precise. Professor Omar Naidu emerged from the shadows of the tavern, his hands clasped behind his back. "But you'll also need someone with the historical context to ensure you don't activate a death trap by accident." Eliza glared at him. "And let me guess, you're volunteering?" "Of course," Omar said, his face serene. "I happen to be the foremost expert on Priazari relics. You'd be a fool not to include me." Marcus snorted. "Sounds like you've got a team forming whether you like it or not." Before Eliza could protest, the door to the tavern creaked open once more. This time, the atmosphere shifted. A tall, sharp-eyed man stepped inside, flanked by two burly companions. His dark coat and cold demeanor marked him unmistakably. Victor Blackthorne, a notorious treasure hunter with a penchant for leaving destruction in his wake. His lips curled into a smile as his eyes fell on Eliza's table. Well, Dr. Hart. Fancy meeting you here." Eliza's blood ran cold. She clenched her fists, her mind racing. She'd only just begun her journey, and already the hunt for Eternia's Eye was turning into a deadly game. "Looks like I'm not the only one interested in legends," Victor said, his voice smooth and dangerous. "Care to share the map?" Eliza rose to her feet, her resolve hardening. "Over my dead body," Victor chuckled, his gaze flicking to the group forming around her. "That can be arranged." The storm outside roared louder as lightning illuminated the tavern, casting ominous shadows across the room. The race for the artifact had begun. The Aurora, a battered schooner barely held together by nails and prayers, cut through the turbulent waters of the abyssal strait. Eliza stood at the prow, gripping the rail as salt spray lashed her face. Behind her, Marcus adjusted the sails, his movements practiced and efficient, while Soraya leaned against the mast, inspecting a small dagger she had picked up during their stop at the last port. Omar was in the ship's cramped cabin, poring over the map with a magnifying glass, muttering to himself about Priazari dialects. The tension among the crew was palpable. Victor Blackthorn's arrival in the tavern had left everyone uneasy. Though they had managed to slip out before he could make his move, Eliza knew it was only a matter of time before he caught up. For now, the stormy sea was their ally, obscuring their path from any pursuers. The map led them to a secluded beach on the southernmost isle. Towering cliffs loomed overhead, their jagged edges appearing almost sentient in the moonlight. Nestled at the base of the cliffs was the entrance to the first ruin, a massive stone gate covered in intricate carvings. The Priazari script danced across the surface, forming what Omar excitedly called the first of many trials. "This is a riddle," he announced, running his fingers over the carvings. "To pass, offer what you cannot keep but cannot lose. Any guesses?" "Time," Soraya said immediately. She glanced at the others, smirking at their confusion. "You can't keep time, but you also can't lose it. At least not entirely." Omar looked impressed, but Marcus remained skeptical. "And how exactly do we offer time to a stone door?" Soraya rolled her eyes. "There's always a mechanism. We just need to find it." After a tense hour of searching, Carrie, the quiet cartographer who had joined them at the last port, found a hidden compartment containing a small hourglass. The group placed it into a depression in the center of the gate. As the sand began to flow, the carvings lit up, and the gate slowly groaned open. "Well done," Omar said with a grin, though he eyed Soraya warily. "You're proving more useful than I expected." Unbeknownst to the group, Victor Blackthorn and his men weren't far behind. Through a combination of bribery and brute force, Victor had acquired a partial map of his own. He stood at the edge of the beach, watching as the faint glow of the now-closed stone gate faded into darkness. "Impressive," he murmured, turning to his second-in-command, a wiry tracker named Lila. "But they've done the hard work for us. We'll follow their trail closely." Beyond the stone gate lay the labyrinth, an underground network of twisting tunnels carved from volcanic rock. The air was damp and heavy, the only light coming from the torches Marcus carried. Every step echoed eerily, and strange symbols on the walls seemed to shift when no one was looking. "It's a maze designed to disorient," Omar explained, pointing to the walls. "But these markings are clues. If we interpret them correctly, they'll lead us out." Soraya groaned. "Great, another puzzle." But it wasn't just a puzzle. As they moved deeper into the labyrinth, they began to notice traps. Pressure plates that triggered darts, collapsing ceilings, and even illusions that led them in circles. At one point, Marcus narrowly avoided falling into a hidden pit lined with spikes. "This place was designed to kill intruders," Marcus muttered, wiping sweat from his brow. "It's not just the traps," Eliza said, her voice hushed. "This maze was meant to test the mind as well as the body." The Priazari valued intelligence as much as strength. Eventually, after hours of trial and error, Carrie pieced together a sequence of symbols that formed a map of the labyrinth. With her guidance, they reached the central chamber, a vast cavern filled with bioluminescent plants and a pool of crystal-clear water. As the group rested, Soraya wandered off, seemingly admiring the carvings on the cavern walls. Marcus noticed her and followed, his hand instinctively resting on the hilt of his knife. "You're not thinking of pocketing something, are you?" Marcus asked, his voice low. Soraya smirked. "What's the harm in a little souvenir? Besides, don't act like you're all noble and honest. I've seen the way you look at Eliza when she's not watching. You're hiding something." Marcus glared at her but said nothing. Soraya chuckled and sauntered off, leaving him alone with his thoughts. The moment of calm was shattered when Victor and his crew ambushed them in the cavern. Armed with pistols and blades, Victor strode forward, his expression smug. "Thank you for clearing the way," he said, pointing his weapon at Eliza. "Now, hand over the map." Eliza glared at him, her hands balling into fists. "If you think I'm just going to..." Before she could finish, Marcus stepped forward, his knife drawn. Go. I'll hold them off. The others hesitated, but Marcus growled, Go. Now. Eliza led the group deeper into the ruins, leaving Marcus to face Victor and his men. For a moment it seemed like a suicide mission, but Marcus had his own reasons for standing his ground. Deeper in the ruins, Eliza and the others found themselves in front of a massive mural depicting the Priazari's fall. At its center was Eternia's eye, glowing faintly even in the carvings. Below the mural was an inscription, Only those who seek not power but wisdom may claim the eye. Omar's face fell. This isn't just a treasure, it's a test of intent. Soraya snorted. So what happens if someone with the wrong intent tries to take it? Death, Eliza said grimly. She looked back toward the cavern, knowing Marcus was still fighting for their lives. And we're running out of time. Eliza's heart pounded as they stepped into the final chamber. The room was vast, its domed ceiling glimmering with gemstones embedded in constellations that mirrored the night sky. At the center stood a pedestal bathed in an otherworldly glow, and atop it rested Eternia's eye, a perfectly spherical artifact of crystal, swirling with shifting colors that seemed to reflect infinity itself. It's beautiful, Omar whispered, his hands trembling as he took a step forward. Eliza grabbed his arm. Wait, look at the floor. The mosaic tiles surrounding the pedestal depicted scenes of destruction. Empires crumbling, seas boiling, skies aflame. The message was clear, claiming the eye came with a terrible cost for those unworthy. Only those who seek not power but wisdom may claim the eye, Eliza recited aloud, staring at the inscription carved into the pedestal. This isn't about brute force or greed. It's about understanding. Before they could proceed, the sound of footsteps echoed through the chamber. Victor Blackthorne strode in, blood streaking his face but a triumphant smirk on his lips. Behind him were a few of his remaining men, and Marcus, bruised but alive, his hands tied and a gun pressed to his back. Well, Victor said, clapping slowly. You've led me to quite the prize. As expected. His eyes gleamed as he approached the pedestal. Step aside, Doctor. I'll be taking this now. You don't understand, Eliza said, stepping between Victor and the eye. This isn't just a treasure. It's a test. If you take it with the wrong intent. Oh, spare me the lecture, Victor sneered, shoving her aside. Do you think I came this far to let fairy tales stop me? Victor reached for the eye, but as his fingers brushed the surface, the room shuddered violently. The constellations above flickered, and the floor beneath them cracked, revealing a swirling void of darkness. A ghostly figure, an ancient guardian, rose from the pedestal, its voice resonating like thunder. You are unworthy, it intoned. You seek power, and thus you will pay the price. Victor screamed as the void opened beneath him, dragging him into the darkness. His men panicked, scrambling to flee, but the chamber sealed shut. The guardian turned its hollow gaze to the rest of the group. Eliza stepped forward, trembling but resolute. I don't seek power, she said, her voice steady. I seek understanding. I want to preserve history, to honor the wisdom of those who came before us. The guardian seemed to study her, its glowing eyes flickering. If you speak the truth, then you may proceed. But only one may bear the eye. It demands a choice. The group exchanged uneasy glances. Omar looked torn, his academic obsession battling with the realization of the danger. Soraya, for once, was silent, her gaze fixed on the swirling light of the eye. It has to be you, Eliza, Marcus said finally, his voice gruff. You're the only one who cares about what this means, not what it can do. Eliza hesitated, then nodded. Slowly, she approached the pedestal and reached out. The moment her fingers touched the eye, a wave of light engulfed her. Visions flooded her mind, scenes of ancient civilizations, their rise and fall, the wisdom they had gained, and the mistakes that had doomed them. When the light faded, Eliza stood trembling but unharmed. The eye rested in her hands, its glow subdued but still mesmerizing. You have passed the test, the guardian said, its form beginning to fade. The knowledge of the eye is yours to protect. The chamber began to collapse as soon as the guardian disappeared. Marcus, despite his injuries, cut himself free and barked orders. Run! Now! With the map and the eye in hand, the group retraced their steps through the labyrinth, narrowly avoiding falling debris and reactivated traps. The ground shook violently, and the ruins began sinking into the earth as if the island itself were reclaiming the treasure. They burst out onto the beach just as the final section of the ruins crumbled. The Aurora was still anchored offshore, and they barely managed to row out to it as the abyssal isle vanished beneath the waves. Back on the ship, the group sat in silence, the weight of their journey settling over them. Omar finally broke the silence. "What will you do with it?" he asked, nodding toward the eye in Eliza's lap. Eliza looked down at the artifact, its surface shimmering faintly. "It's not a weapon. It's a warning. The Priazari destroyed themselves trying to control it. This belongs in a place where it can't be used by anyone. Not Victor, not anyone like him." Marcus nodded approvingly. "Smart move." Soraya smirked. "You're a better person than I am. I'd have sold it for a fortune." Eliza gave a tired laugh, the first real one since their journey began. "Then it's a good thing it's in my hands." Weeks later, Eliza stood in a secure vault in a remote, unmarked location, watching as Eternia's eye was sealed away. She felt a pang of loss but knew it was the right choice. The world wasn't ready for the power it contained. As she stepped outside, Marcus, Soraya, and Carrie were waiting. "So," Marcus said, "what's next?" Eliza smiled faintly. "I hear there's a lead on some ruins in the Arctic. Priazari, if the sources are right." Soraya groaned. "More ruins? Can't we just enjoy the spoils of this one?" Eliza's grin widened. "Where's the fun in that?" As the group walked off into the horizon, the faintest glimmer of the eye's light shone from its hidden chamber, as if waiting for its next chapter to unfold.